Hello, dear friend. Welcome back to another evening of magic and mystery. I'm so glad you're here. Tonight's adventure takes us deep into the heart of Hogwarts, where ancient secrets whisper between leather-bound pages and moonlight paints silver stories across stone floors. You'll be sneaking through shadowed corridors, uncovering forbidden knowledge, and discovering that sometimes the most dangerous magic isn't found in spells, but in the choices we make when no one's watching. So settle in somewhere comfortable, perhaps with a warm drink and a soft blanket. Let the world outside fade away for a while. Take a deep breath, and when you're ready, let's step together into the castle where anything is possible. The library smells like old paper and beeswax tonight, a scent so familiar it feels like coming home. You're tucked into your usual corner on the third floor, the one with the window that overlooks the herbology greenhouses, where the glass panes glow softly amber in the evening light. Your Transfiguration textbook lies open before you, filled with diagrams of teacups transforming into tortoises, but the words keep blurring together no matter how many times you read the same paragraph. Professor Wickham's assignment is due tomorrow morning, and you've barely written 3 inches of the required 12. It's not that you don't understand the material, it's just that focusing feels impossible when your mind keeps wandering to a dozen other, more interesting things. The library is unusually quiet for a Thursday evening. Most students are probably down in the Great Hall finishing dinner, or already retreating to their common rooms to study in more comfortable surroundings. You can hear the distant sound of Madame Pince's footsteps as she moves between the shelves, occasionally tutting at books that haven't been returned to their proper places. The woman has an almost supernatural ability to sense when someone is mistreating a book, even from 3 floors away. You've learned to be very, very careful about dog-earing pages anywhere near her domain. Your quill scratches half-heartedly across the parchment as you write another sentence about the principles of cross-species transformation. The tip catches on a rough spot in the paper, leaving an ink blot that spreads like a tiny black flower. You sigh and reach for your wand to vanish it, whispering the spell so quietly that it's barely more than a breath. The blot disappears, but your concentration doesn't return with it. Instead, your gaze drifts to the window, where you can see the first stars beginning to appear in the deepening blue of the evening sky. That's when you hear it. The voices are low and urgent, coming from somewhere beyond the tall shelf to your left. At first you think it might be Madame Pince speaking to a student, but then you recognize one of the voices, and your heart gives an odd little jump. It's Silas Blackwood, a 6th-year Ravenclaw with a reputation for being brilliant and knowing it far too well. He's the kind of person who always sits in the front row, always has his hand up first, always manages to make everyone else feel slightly inadequate without saying anything directly cruel. You've had a few classes with him over the years, and while you can't say you dislike him exactly, there's something about the way he carries himself that rubs you the wrong way, like he's perpetually disappointed that the rest of the world can't keep up with his intellect. You shouldn't eavesdrop. You know you shouldn't, but curiosity has always been your weakness, the thing that's gotten you into trouble more times than you can count. And besides, there's something in Silas's tone that makes you pause. He sounds different than usual, less polished and more desperate, like he's trying to convince someone of something important. Carefully, very carefully, you set down your quill and lean back in your chair, angling your head to hear better. The voices are still muffled by the shelves and the general ambient sound of the library, so you pull out your wand and whisper the quietest version of a listening charm you know, one that Marlowe Thorne taught you last year during a particularly boring History of Magic lecture. The spell settles over your ears like a soft film of warmth, and suddenly the voices become crystal clear. "I'm telling you, it's there," Silas is saying, and there's an edge to his voice you've never heard before. "The Corvus manuscript. It's in the restricted section, hidden among the defense texts. My father mentioned it once when he was telling me about his own time at Hogwarts. But why would you even want to read something like that?" The second voice belongs to a younger student, probably a third or fourth year, and she sounds nervous. "If it's restricted, there's usually a good reason. Those books can be dangerous." "Dangerous," Silas repeats, and you can practically hear the eye roll in his tone. Everything powerful is labeled dangerous by people too timid to use it properly. The Corvus manuscript contains forgotten magic, spells and techniques that were lost when the ministry started banning anything they didn't understand. It's knowledge that could prove invaluable. There's a pause, and you hold your breath, straining to hear more. Your transfiguration homework is completely forgotten now, pushed to the side as you focus entirely on the conversation happening just out of sight. "When are you planning to, the girl whispers. And even with the listening charm, you have to concentrate to make out her words. "Try to get in there?" "Saturday night," Silas says, and now his voice drops even lower, taking on a conspiratorial quality that makes the hair on the back of your neck stand up. "Madame Pince has a staff meeting every other Saturday evening. She'll be gone for at least an hour, maybe longer. That's when I'll make my move. The restricted section locks are complex, but I've been studying the charm work, and I think I can manage it." Your pulse quickens. Saturday night, that's only 2 days away. The restricted section of the library has always held a certain dark fascination for you, with its chains and its warnings and its promises of knowledge that ordinary students aren't meant to access. You've walked past it countless times, peering through the bars at the ancient volumes within, wondering what secrets they might contain. But you've never been brave enough, or perhaps foolish enough, to actually try to break in. Until now, apparently, the thought whispers through your mind before you can stop it. "I don't know, Silas," the girl is saying, doubt heavy in every word. "This seems like a really bad idea. What if you get caught? What if there are curses on the books? I've heard stories about people who tried to steal from the restricted section and ended up in the hospital wing for weeks." "I won't get caught," Silas replies with absolute confidence. "And I know how to handle cursed objects. You don't need to worry about me, Evelyn. I needed to tell someone, that's all. It helps to say it out loud, to make it feel real." There's the sound of movement, chairs scraping against stone, and you realize they're about to leave. Quickly, you cancel the listening charm and grab your quill, bending over your parchment as if you've been diligently working this entire time. Your heart is hammering against your ribs, and you have to take a slow breath to steady yourself. Footsteps pass your table, and you risk a glance up. Silas Blackwood strides by without looking in your direction, his dark robe swishing around his ankles, his expression set in determined lines. Behind him, a small, mousy girl with Ravenclaw colors on her tie hurries to keep up, looking worried and uncertain. They disappear around a corner, heading toward the library exit, and silence settles back over the space like dust. You sit there for a long moment, staring at your half-finished essay without really seeing it. Your mind is racing, turning over everything you just heard, examining it from different angles, the way you might study a particularly tricky charm. The Corvus manuscript. Forbidden magic, Saturday night. It's the kind of secret that feels heavy. The kind that demands action, even though you're not entirely sure what that action should be. Part of you, the sensible part that sounds suspiciously like your mother's voice, says you should tell a professor immediately. Let the adults handle it. Stay out of trouble for once in your life. But there's another part, larger and louder, and far more insistent, that whispers something different. What if you could see the manuscript yourself? What if you could discover what Silas is so desperate to find? What if this is your chance to prove that you're more than just an average student who struggles with transfiguration homework and tends to procrastinate until the last possible minute? Before you can think better of it, before the sensible voice can gain any ground, you're gathering up your things and shoving them into your bag. The essay can wait. Right now, you need to find Marlowe. The Hufflepuff common room is exactly as warm and welcoming as always when you finally make your way back after leaving the library. The circular space is located near the castle's kitchens, and there's almost always a faint scent of fresh bread or baking pastries drifting through the air, mingling with the earthy smell of the plants that fill every available surface. The common room's rounded walls are covered in honey-colored wood paneling, and the furniture is all overstuffed armchairs and squashy sofas in shades of yellow and black. A fire crackles merrily in the hearth, casting dancing shadows across the copper light fixtures and the portraits of famous Hufflepuffs that line the walls. You love this room. You've always loved it, from the very first time you climbed through the entrance, hidden behind the stack of barrels. It feels safe here, comfortable in a way that makes your shoulders relax and your breathing slow. This is home, more so even than your family's house, with its 2 neat rooms and 2 high expectations. Right now, though, you barely notice the familiar comfort. You're scanning the room for Marlowe, and you spot her almost immediately. She's sitting in one of the window alcoves, her legs tucked beneath her, and a thick potions textbook balanced on her knees. Even from across the room, you can see the intense focus on her face, the way her dark eyes move rapidly across the page as she absorbs information with the efficiency of someone who's trained themselves to study anywhere, anytime. Marlowe Thorne is one of your closest friends, despite the fact that she's a Slytherin 5th year and therefore, theoretically, supposed to view you with at least mild disdain. But Marlowe has never been very good at following theoretical expectations. You met her during your 2nd year when you were both stuck in detention for completely different infractions. She'd hexed a 7th year who'd been bullying a 1st year, and you'd accidentally set fire to a desk in charms class, and you'd bonded over your mutual frustration with unfair punishments. Since then, you've been nearly inseparable, much to the confusion of some of your respective housemates. Marlowe, you say as you approach her alcove, keeping your voice low so as not to disturb the other students scattered around the common room. I need to talk to you. It's important. She looks up, one elegant eyebrow rising in question. Marlowe has the kind of face that would look at home in a Renaissance painting, all sharp angles and intelligent eyes, with long dark hair that she usually keeps pulled back in a practical braid. Tonight, she's wearing her school uniform, still, though she's loosened her green and silver tie and rolled up her sleeves. Important how? She asks, her tone carefully neutral. Marlowe is nothing if not cautious, always thinking 3 steps ahead, always considering consequences. It's what makes her such a brilliant chess player and such an excellent person to have on your side when things go wrong. Important as in, I overheard something in the library that I probably wasn't supposed to hear, and now I can't stop thinking about it, you admit, dropping into the seat across from her. The window alcove is partially hidden from the rest of the room by a hanging curtain of vines, giving you a small measure of privacy. Marlowe closes her textbook with a soft thump and sets it aside, giving you her full attention. Go on. You take a breath and then tell her everything. The conversation between Silas Blackwood and the nervous girl named Evelyn. The Corvus manuscript hidden in the restricted section. The plan to break in on Saturday night during Madame Pince's staff meeting. As you talk, you watch Marlowe's expression shift from curiosity to concern, to something that looks almost like excitement, though she tries to hide it. The Corvus manuscript, she says slowly when you've finished. I've heard of it, actually. There was a reference to it in one of my father's old books, something about it being a collection of memory charms and cognitive manipulation spells that were banned in the early 1900s. Supposedly, it was written by someone who'd studied with Corvus Lestrange, back before the family became quite so notorious. Memory charms, you repeat, leaning forward. Why would Silas want access to those? Marlowe's lips press into a thin line. Why does anyone want to manipulate memories? To cheat, to hide something, to make people forget? Nothing good ever comes from that kind of magic. It's dangerous, and not just because it's illegal. Memories are fragile things. Start pulling at threads, and you might unravel someone's entire sense of self. A chill runs down your spine at her words, but it doesn't dampen your curiosity. If anything, it makes the whole situation feel more urgent, more real. So what do? Tell a professor? We could, Marlowe says carefully, but you can already see the gears turning behind her eyes. Or we could make sure he doesn't get his hands on it. If we get to the restricted section first, if we can secure the manuscript, or at least see what he's after, we might be able to understand what he's planning. Knowledge is power, after all. You blink at her. Wait, are you suggesting that we break into the restricted section ourselves? I'm suggesting that we might want to monitor the situation, Marlowe corrects, though there's a small smile playing at the corners of her mouth. Hypothetically speaking, before you can respond, a familiar voice pipes up from somewhere behind you. Did someone say break into the restricted section? Because count me in. You turn to find Pippa Grenick standing there, her round face lit up with enthusiasm. Pippa is your doormate, and possibly the most relentlessly cheerful person you've ever met. She's a fourth year like you, with a wild mass of strawberry blonde curls that never seems to stay where it's supposed to, and a smattering of freckles across her nose. Right now, she's holding a plate piled high with what looks like freshly baked scones, probably pilfered from the kitchens using one of the shortcuts she knows. Pippa, you start. How long have you been listening? Long enough, she says cheerfully, plopping down next to you and offering the plate of scones. I was just coming over to see if you wanted a snack, and then I heard you two talking about forbidden manuscripts and breaking school rules, which honestly sounds way more interesting than the herbology essay I'm supposed to be working on. So, yes, definitely, absolutely, I am involved in this plan now. Marlowe looks like she wants to protest, but you can see the resignation in her eyes. Once Pippa decides she's part of something, there's no convincing her otherwise. It's one of her most admirable and most frustrating qualities. This isn't a game, Pippa, Marlowe says, though her tone is gentle. "If we get caught, it won't be a simple detention. Breaking into the restricted section is serious." "I know it's serious," Pippa replies, completely unbothered. "That's why you need me. I know passages through this castle that even the Marauder's map probably doesn't show. My gran was a student here back in the 70s, and she told me all about the secret routes she used to use. Plus, I'm brilliant at keeping watch. Remember last year when we snuck into the kitchens after hours and I managed to keep us from getting caught by Filch? I have a system." You can't help but smile. Pippa's enthusiasm is infectious, and the truth is she's right. Her knowledge of Hogwarts' secret passages is encyclopedic, and having her on your side would definitely improve your chances of pulling this off without getting expelled. "All right," you say, making the decision before you can overthink it. "We do this together, all three of us, but we need a proper plan. We can't just wander in there and hope for the best." Marlowe nods, already pulling out a piece of parchment and a self-inking quill from her bag. "Agreed. We have 2 days to prepare. Let's use them wisely." The next 2 days pass in a blur of whispered planning sessions and careful preparation. You meet with Marlowe and Pippa whenever you can find a private moment, tucked away in empty classrooms or hidden corners of the castle where you're unlikely to be overheard. Marlowe approaches the whole thing like a military operation, making lists and diagrams and contingency plans for every possible scenario. Pippa contributes her knowledge of secret passages and keeps the mood light with jokes and optimistic declarations that everything will definitely work out fine. You find yourself caught between their two approaches, trying to balance caution with confidence, practicality with possibility. On Friday afternoon, you're in Charms class trying to master a particularly tricky silencing spell when you notice Silas Blackwood 3 rows ahead of you. He's performing the charm perfectly, of course, his wand movements precise and controlled as he renders a set of chiming bells completely mute. But there's something off about him today. He keeps glancing around the classroom with sharp, suspicious movements, as if he expects someone to be watching him. When Professor Engel compliments his wand work, Silas barely acknowledges her, just nods curtly, and immediately goes back to practicing the spell with an intensity that borders on obsessive. He's nervous, you realize. Whatever confidence he displayed in the library the other night is cracking now that the actual moment is approaching. You wonder if he's having second thoughts, if maybe the reality of breaking into the restricted section is finally hitting him. After class, you linger near the doorway as students file out, pretending to reorganize your bag while keeping Silas in your peripheral vision. He exits quickly, robes billowing behind him, and you catch a glimpse of his face as he passes under the corridor torchlight. There are dark circles under his eyes, and his jaw is clenched tight. He looks like someone who hasn't slept properly in days. "He's scared," Marlowe observes quietly, appearing at your elbow. She must have noticed your observation. That makes him unpredictable. We'll need to be extra careful tomorrow night. "Do you think he'll actually go through with it?" you ask, adjusting your bag strap. Marlowe considers this for a moment. "Yes," she says finally. He's too proud to back out now. He's probably told himself that he's committed, that turning back would be a sign of weakness. That's the problem with people like Silas. They'd rather risk everything than admit they might be wrong. Her words stay with you for the rest of the day, settling somewhere in the back of your mind like a stone. By the time Saturday arrives, you're a bundle of nerves and anticipation. Classes drag by with excruciating slowness. In herbology, you accidentally nearly decapitate a fanged geranium because you're not paying attention. During lunch, you barely taste your food, mechanically eating while your mind runs through the plan over and over again. The plan itself is relatively straightforward, at least in theory. Pippa will lead you through a secret passage she knows that exits near the library's east entrance, the one furthest from Madame Pince's office. Marlowe has brewed what she calls a distraction draft, a potion that, when poured near a doorway, will create a series of odd noises and smells designed to draw attention away from your actual location. You'll be responsible for any lock-breaking charms that might be necessary, since charms has always been your strongest subject. Once inside the restricted section, you'll try to locate the Corvus manuscript before Silas does. And then, well, you haven't entirely figured out that part yet. Marlowe suggests securing it somehow, maybe hiding it in a different location, while Pippa thinks you should at least look at it to understand what Silas is after. As evening approaches, you find yourself back in the Hufflepuff common room, trying to act normal even though your insides feel like they're performing acrobatic tricks. You attempt to work on your transfiguration essay, the one that's now severely overdue, but the words won't come. Pippa keeps shooting you significant looks from across the room, her eyes bright with barely suppressed excitement. Marlowe stops by around 7 o'clock, ostensibly to return a book she borrowed, but really to confirm that everything is still on for tonight. "The staff meeting started 15 minutes ago," she murmurs as she hands you a copy of Advanced Potion Making. "Madame Pince was heading toward the 3rd floor. We should wait until 9:30 just to be safe. Give everyone time to settle in for the night." You nod, your mouth too dry to speak. This is really happening. You're really going to do this. The hours between 7 and 9:30 feel like the longest of your entire life. You watch the clock on the common room wall tick forward with agonizing slowness, each minute an eternity. Other students come and go, chatting about homework and Quidditch and weekend plans, completely oblivious to the fact that you're about to commit what might be the most serious rule violation of your Hogwarts career. Finally, the appointed time arrives. Pippa catches your eye and gives a tiny nod. You stand up, stretching casually, as if you're just heading to bed early, and make your way toward the dormitory stairs. But instead of going up to your room, you take a sharp left and slip behind a large painting of a bowl of fruit, where Pippa is already waiting. "Ready?" she whispers, her face flushed with excitement. "As I'll ever be," you whisper back. She leads you through a narrow corridor you've never noticed before, one that runs behind the main common room wall. The passage is barely wider than your shoulders, and you have to move sideways in some places, but Pippa navigates it with the confidence of someone who's walked this route 100 times. After what feels like both seconds and hours, you emerge in a small alcove behind a tapestry depicting Helga Hufflepuff, surrounded by magical creatures. Marlowe is waiting there, dressed entirely in black, her hair pulled back in a tight braid. She's holding a small vial filled with something that swirls with iridescent colors, the distraction draft presumably, and her expression is focused and calm. "Everyone remember the plan?" she asks quietly. You and Pippa both nod. "Then let's go." The castle at night is a different creature entirely. Shadows pool in corners and stretch along walls, animated by the flickering torchlight. Every sound seems amplified. The whisper of your robes against stone, the distant hoot of an owl, the soft creaking of the castle settling into itself. You move through the corridors like ghosts, keeping to the darkest parts, freezing whenever you hear footsteps or voices in the distance. Pippa leads the way, taking you through a series of passages and shortcuts that you never knew existed. Behind a statue here, through a hidden door there, down a staircase that seems to appear only when you're not looking directly at it. Hogwarts is full of secrets. You've always known that, but tonight those secrets feel more present than ever, as if the castle itself is watching your progress with ancient, knowing eyes. You pass a window and pause for just a moment to look out. The grounds are bathed in moonlight, silver and ethereal, and you can see the forbidden forest in the distance, a dark mass against the star-studded sky. For a heartbeat, you consider turning back. You could still return to your common room, crawl into your warm bed, forget this whole mad idea. But then Marlowe touches your elbow gently, urging you forward, and the moment passes. The library's east entrance finally comes into view, and you feel your pulse kick up another notch. The tall wooden doors are closed, but not locked, not yet. Madame Pince always secures them from the inside before she leaves, but if she's still at the staff meeting, there should be time. Wait here, Marlowe breathes, so quietly you almost don't hear her. She creeps forward, moving with surprising stealth for someone who spends most of her time in a dungeon laboratory, and presses her ear against the door. After a long moment, she turns back and gives you a thumbs up. Empty. The three of you slip inside, and immediately you're enveloped by that familiar library smell, amplified somehow in the darkness. Parchment and leather and old magic, thick enough to taste. Marlowe closes the door behind you with barely a whisper of sound, and then you're standing there in the dimness, lit only by the moonlight streaming through the high windows. The library at night is beautiful in a haunting, ethereal way. The moonlight paints everything in shades of silver and shadow, making the rows of shelves look like corridors in some ancient temple. Books line the walls from floor to ceiling, thousands upon thousands of them, containing more knowledge than you could absorb in multiple lifetimes. Somewhere in this vast collection is the restricted section, and somewhere in the restricted section is the Corvus manuscript. This way, Pippa whispers, pointing toward the back of the library. The restricted section is on the lower level, past the study area. You move between the shelves, your footsteps muffled by the thick carpet runners that line the main aisles. Every creak and groan of the old building makes your heart jump. You keep, expecting Madame Pince to appear out of nowhere, her thin face twisted in fury, or for Filch to come shuffling around a corner with Mrs. Norris at his heels. But the library remains empty and silent, holding its breath. The restricted section sits at the far end of the library, separated from the rest of the collection by an ornate iron gate. The metalwork is beautiful and terrible all at once, formed into shapes that suggest ravens and serpents and other creatures you can't quite identify. Beyond the gate, you can see shelves of darker, older books, their spines cracked with age, some of them wrapped in chains or enclosed in glass cases. There's a heaviness to the air here, a sense of accumulated power and danger that makes the hair on your arms stand up. "All right," Marlowe says, her voice barely above a breath. "Time for the distraction draft. If anyone comes investigating, the sound should draw them to the other end of the library while we work." She uncorks the vial and carefully pours its contents near the entrance to the main reading room, several sections away from where you're standing. For a moment, nothing happens. Then you hear it, a sound like books falling, followed by a weird whistling noise, and what might be ghostly whispering. It's eerie and compelling, exactly the sort of thing that would make a person go investigate. That should buy us some time, Marlowe says with satisfaction. Now, the lock. You step up to the iron gate, pulling out your wand. Your hand is shaking slightly, and you have to take a breath to steady it. This is the moment. Once you open this gate, you're committed. There's no pretending you wandered in here by accident, no innocent explanation. You point your wand at the lock and whisper, "Alohomora." Nothing happens. The lock doesn't even rattle. It won't be that simple, Marlowe says. Try the counterclockwise variant. Focus on the internal mechanism, not the lock itself. You adjust your wand position and try again. This time, visualizing the spell traveling through the metal, finding the pins and tumblers hidden inside. Alohomora maxima, you breathe, adding a sharp twist of your wrist. There's a click, faint but unmistakable, and the lock glows briefly with golden light before releasing. The gate swings open with a soft creak that sounds thunderously loud in the silence. You're in. The three of you step through the gateway into the restricted section, and immediately the temperature drops several degrees. Your breath mists in the air, and you pull your robes tighter around yourself. The books here are different from the ones in the main library. These volumes look ancient, their covers made of leather and materials you don't recognize, some of them seeming to pulse with a faint inner light. You can hear whispers coming from some of the shelves, words in languages you don't understand, and occasionally a book will shift on its own, as if reaching toward you. Don't touch anything unless you have to, Marlowe warns. Some of these books have defensive enchantments. I read about a student who tried to steal one back in the 1890s and ended up with a permanent stutter. Pippa looks nervous for the first time since this whole adventure began. Right, no touching. Got it. So, how do we find this Corvus manuscript? That's when you hear it, a sound from deeper in the restricted section, like someone moving between shelves. You freeze, your hand instinctively gripping your wand tighter. For a moment you think it might be Madame Pince, that somehow she finished her meeting early and caught you after all. But then a figure emerges from between two towering bookcases, and you recognize him immediately. Silas Blackwood looks even worse than he did in Charms class yesterday. His robes are disheveled, his normally neat hair falling across his forehead, and there's a wild, desperate look in his eyes. He's holding his wand in one hand and a piece of parchment in the other, presumably notes about the manuscript's location. When he sees the three of you standing there, he actually jumps, his face going pale. "What are you doing here?" he demands, his voice coming out strangled and too loud in the oppressive quiet. "We could ask you the same thing," Marlowe says coolly, stepping forward. "Though I think we already know the answer. You're looking for the Corvus manuscript." Silas's expression shifts rapidly through shock, anger, and finally settles on something like resignation. "You were listening," he says flatly. "In the library the other day. I knew someone might have. I knew I should have cast a Muffliato charm, but Evelyn insisted we didn't have time." "Why do you want it, Silas?" you ask, finding your voice. "Memory manipulation spells. That's dark magic. That's the kind of thing that can get you sent to Azkaban." He laughs, but there's no humor in it. "You don't understand. None of you understand. My family, they demand excellence. My father was head boy. My mother was the youngest person ever appointed to the Wizengamot. My older brother just made department head at the ministry, and he's only 25. And me, I'm just Silas, The disappointment who got 6 outstanding OWLs instead of 10. 6 outstanding OWLs is brilliant, Pippa protests. Most people would be thrilled with that. Most people aren't Blackwoods, Silas says bitterly. I have NEWTs this year. If I don't score perfectly, if I don't prove that I'm just as good as the rest of them, then I'm nothing. I thought if I could find the manuscript, if I could use just 1 or 2 of the spells to help me remember everything perfectly, to never forget a single detail during exams, then I might have a chance. There's something heartbreaking in his confession, a vulnerability that you never expected from someone as arrogant as Silas. But there's also something terrifying in it, because you can see that he's serious. He's desperate enough to do something incredibly stupid and dangerous. That's not the answer, Marlowe says, her voice gentler than you've ever heard it. Using dark magic to cheat on exams, that's not going to prove anything. You'd be living a lie. And memory magic, Silas, it doesn't work the way you think it does. You can't just enhance your recall without consequences. Those spells alter the fundamental structure of your mind. They can cause permanent damage, madness, identity loss. Is that really worth a few exam scores? You don't get to judge me, Silas snaps, but his hand is trembling. You don't get to stand there and pretend you understand what it's like to have your entire worth measured by a number on a piece of parchment. Before anyone can respond, one of the books on a nearby shelf lets out a sudden, piercing shriek. The sound is so unexpected and so loud that all 4 of you jump. The book, bound in what looks like dragon hide, is vibrating violently, and its pages are flipping open and closed with rapid, angry movements. Someone touched it, Marlowe says urgently. One of us must have brushed against it by accident. We need to... But she doesn't get to finish her sentence, because at that moment, Silas makes his move. He turns and runs deeper into the restricted section, his robes flying behind him. Without thinking, without planning, you take off after him, your feet pounding against the stone floor. You hear Marlowe and Pippa calling your name, but you're already too far ahead to stop. The restricted section seems to go on forever, twisting and turning like a maze. You chase Silas through narrow passages between shelves that tower above your head, their contents pressing in from both sides. Some of the books seem to lean toward you as you pass, their covers warm and almost breathing. Others emit soft glowing lights in colors you've never seen before, ultraviolet and infrared made visible, painting the air with impossible hues. "Silas, stop!" you shout, but he doesn't slow down. If anything, he speeds up, taking a sharp left around a corner. You follow, your lungs burning, and nearly crash into him when you find him standing perfectly still in front of a particular shelf. This one is different from the others. The books here are all bound in black, and they're arranged in a pattern that suggests deliberate organization rather than alphabetical order. In the center of the middle shelf sits a volume that immediately draws your eye. It's larger than the others, bound in what looks like actual raven feathers, glossy black and iridescent in the moonlight that filters through a nearby window. The spine bears no title, just a symbol, a raven with its wings spread, holding a scroll in its talons. "That's it," Silas breathes, reaching for it. "That's the Corvus manuscript." "Don't," you say, stepping forward, but it's too late. His fingers close around the spine, and the moment he pulls it from the shelf, everything changes. The temperature plummets so fast you can see your breath crystallizing in the air. The moonlight coming through the window seems to dim, as if something is blocking it from outside. And then you hear it, the sound of wings. Dozens of them, hundreds maybe, beating against the windows and the walls and the ceiling. But when you look around, you see nothing. No birds, no creatures, just the sound growing louder and louder until it fills your entire head. "What's happening?" Silas says, his voice rising with panic. He's clutching the manuscript to his chest, and you can see that the book itself has begun to glow with a cold blue light. Marlowe and Pippa catch up to you then, both of them breathing hard, and Marlowe's face goes white when she sees what Silas is holding. "Put it back," she says urgently. "Right now, Silas, put it back on the shelf." "But I haven't even opened it yet. I haven't." "The book is protected," Marlowe cuts him off. "Can't you feel it? The magic, it's defensive. It knows it's been taken, and it's calling for something." The sound of wings grows impossibly louder, and now you can see shadows moving on the walls, cast by things that aren't there. The shadows have the shape of birds, large ones with curved beaks and sharp talons. They circle and dive across the stone surfaces, growing more solid with each passing second. "Silas, please," Pippa says, her voice small and frightened. "Please put it back." But Silas seems frozen, staring down at the manuscript in his hands. The blue glow has intensified, and you can see text appearing on the cover, words writing themselves in silver script. They're in a language you don't recognize, something ancient and strange. But even without understanding them, you can feel their power. They pulse with a rhythm, like a heartbeat, slow and steady and deeply wrong. "I just wanted to look," Silas whispers. "I just wanted to see if it could help me. I didn't mean for..." One of the shadow ravens peels away from the wall and swoops toward him. It's more solid now, more real, and when it passes through the space where his shoulder is, he cries out in pain and staggers backward. The manuscript falls from his hands and hits the floor with a thump that echoes like thunder. The moment the book touches stone, it flies open. Pages flip rapidly, as if caught in a violent wind, though the air around you is perfectly still. The words on those pages begin to glow, bright and terrible, and you realize with horror that they're not just glowing, they're lifting off the paper. Letters and symbols rise into the air like smoke, swirling around all four of you in a spiral that grows tighter and tighter. "We have to close it," Marlowe shouts over the sound of wings. "Someone has to physically close the book." You don't think. You just move. You dive forward, dropping to your knees beside the manuscript, and reach for it. The moment your fingers touch the cover, you feel a shock of cold that runs all the way up your arm and into your chest. It's like plunging your hand into ice water, except the cold is inside you, spreading through your veins. But you don't let go. You grab the cover and start to push it closed, fighting against a resistance that feels almost alive. The letters in the air swirl faster, and now they're forming shapes, images of memories that aren't yours. You see flashes of faces you don't recognize, places you've never been, moments from lives you've never lived. A woman standing in a garden, laughing. A man bent over a desk, writing by candlelight. A child running through grass, chasing butterflies. The memories pour over you like water, trying to find cracks where they can seep in and take root. Don't listen to them. Marlowe is beside you now, her hands joining yours on the book. Don't let them in. Those memories, they're not real. They're fragments left by people who use the manuscript. If they get into your head, they'll push out your own memories. Focus on something concrete, something true about yourself. You close your eyes and think of home. Not your family's house, but the Hufflepuff common room. The smell of fresh bread, the warmth of the fire, your cat curling up in your lap, Pippa's laughter, Marlowe's steady presence, the weight of your wand in your hand. These things are real. These things are yours. The resistance against the book weakens just slightly. You push harder, and Marlowe pushes with you, and slowly, the pages begin to move back toward closed. The shadow ravens are screaming now, a sound that's almost words, almost language, but not quite. They dive and circle, and each time one passes through you, there's that shocking cold, but you don't let go. "Pippa," you gasp. "The shelf. We need to get it back on the shelf." Pippa nods, her face determined despite the fear in her eyes. She grabs her wand and points it at the space on the shelf where the manuscript came from. "Immobilis preparatum," she says, a spell you've never heard before, and the shelf glows with soft golden light. It's a positioning spell, you realize, one that marks the exact location where something belongs. "On 3, Marlowe says. "We lift it together. 1, 2, 3. All 3 of you grab the manuscript, you and Marlowe still holding it closed, Pippa supporting it from below, and you heave it upward. It's impossibly heavy, far heavier than any book should be, as if the weight of all the memories inside it has physical mass. Your arms shake with the effort, but you keep pushing, lifting, reaching for that glowing spot on the shelf. The shadow ravens intensify their attack. They're all around you now, pecking and clawing, and you can feel each strike even though they're not quite solid. It's like being hit with ice, cold that bruises rather than cuts. Silas is still on the ground behind you, curled up with his arms over his head, and you can hear him crying. "Almost there," Pippa grunts. Just a little higher. With a final surge of effort, you lift the manuscript those last few inches and shove it back into its place on the shelf. The moment it settles into position, everything stops. The sound of wings cuts off instantly. The shadow ravens vanish as if they never existed. The floating letters dissolve into nothing. The temperature begins to rise, slowly at first and then more quickly, until you can no longer see your breath in the air. You collapse backward onto the floor, your whole body shaking. Marlowe sits down hard beside you, her chest heaving. Pippa leans against the shelf, her face flushed and her eyes wide. And Silas is still curled up on the floor, sobbing quietly. For a long moment, nobody speaks. You just sit there in the silence, listening to your own heartbeat gradually slow, feeling the cold seep out of your bones. The manuscript sits on its shelf, innocuous now, just another black-bound book among many. But you can still feel the echo of its power, the way it reached into your mind and tried to rewrite what was there. "That," Pippa finally says, her voice shaky, "was absolutely terrifying." Marlowe lets out a sound that's half laugh, half sob. "I tried to warn him. I tried to tell him memory magic was dangerous." You turn to look at Silas. He's sitting up now, his arms wrapped around his knees, rocking slightly. His face is streaked with tears, and he looks younger than you've ever seen him, vulnerable and lost. "I'm sorry," he whispers. "I'm so sorry. I didn't know it would. I thought I could control it. I thought if I was careful, if I was smart enough." "Magic like that doesn't care how smart you are," you say, not unkindly. Your voice comes out rough, scratchy, as if you've been screaming. "It's dangerous because it's powerful, and it's powerful because it touches something fundamental. Memories are what make us who we are. Start changing those and you stop being yourself." Silas nods, still rocking. I saw things, he says. When the book opened, I saw memories. A man who used it to forget the death of his wife. A woman who used it to implant false credentials so she could work at the ministry. A student who tried to erase the memory of killing someone in a duel. They were all there, all those fragments of broken lives, and I could feel them trying to take root in my head. If you hadn't closed the book. He doesn't finish the sentence. He doesn't have to. Marlo stands up slowly, brushing dust from her robes. We need to leave. Now. Before someone comes to investigate what just happened. That much magical discharge, someone must have felt it. She's right. You can feel it yourself, a sort of resonance in the air, like the aftermath of a thunderstorm. Any professor with even a basic sensitivity to magic would be able to sense that something significant just occurred in the library. You climb to your feet, your legs unsteady, and offer a hand to Silas. He looks at it for a moment, surprise flickering across his face, and then takes it. You pull him up, and the four of you stand there in an awkward little cluster, covered in dust and shaking with adrenaline. What are we going to do? Pippa asks. Should we tell someone? It's a good question. The sensible answer would be yes, absolutely. Report everything that happened to a professor and let the adults handle it. But you can see the plea in Silas's eyes, the desperate hope that maybe you'll give him a chance. I think, you say slowly, working it out as you speak, that Silas has learned his lesson, haven't you? He nods frantically. I swear on my magic, I will never touch a book in the restricted section again. I'll never try to manipulate memories or cheat or anything. I'll study harder. I'll accept whatever grades I get honestly. Just please don't report this. My family, they would disown me, and I deserve it. I know I deserve it, but everyone deserves a second chance, Marlo finishes softly. She looks at you and Pippa. We all made the choice to come here tonight. We all broke the rules. If we report Silas, we'll have to report ourselves too. And while I think we had better intentions, the fact remains that we broke into the restricted section. Pippa nods slowly. So, we keep the secret, all of us. We never speak of this again, and Silas, you have to promise that you'll never do anything like this again. I promise, Silas says immediately. I promise on everything I have. You study his face for a moment, looking for any sign of deception, but all you see is genuine remorse and fear. He's learned something tonight, maybe something more valuable than anything he could have gotten from the manuscript. He's learned that there are things more important than family expectations, that some shortcuts lead to places you never want to go. All right, you say. We keep the secret, but Silas, if you ever need help, real help, with studying or dealing with pressure from your family, you can come to any of us. You don't have to face everything alone. The gratitude in his expression is almost painful to see. Thank you, he whispers. Thank you. Getting out of the restricted section and then out of the library itself feels like it takes hours, though it can't be more than 10 minutes. You're all moving more slowly now, exhausted by what just happened, drained in a way that goes beyond physical tiredness. Marlo takes the lead, checking corners before motioning you forward, while Pippa brings up the rear to make sure nobody's following. The castle corridors are still empty when you emerge from the library, but you can hear voices in the distance, professors perhaps, drawn by the magical disturbance. You move quickly through the shadows, retracing your route from earlier, though everything feels different now. The adventure and excitement from the beginning of the night has been replaced by a sobering awareness of just how close you came to disaster. When you reach the tapestry of Helga Hufflepuff, Silas hesitates. "I go a different way from here," he says quietly. "The Ravenclaw Tower is—" "We know where it is," Marlowe says, not unkindly. "Go, be careful, and Silas, get some sleep. You look like you haven't rested properly in days." He manages a weak smile. "I haven't, but I think maybe tonight I actually will." He looks at each of you in turn. "Thank you, truly, for everything, for stopping me from making the worst mistake of my life." Then he's gone, disappearing into the shadows with surprising stealth. The three of you slip through the passage behind the tapestry, navigating the narrow corridor back to the Hufflepuff common room. None of you speak. There's too much to process, too many thoughts swirling around. The common room is nearly empty when you emerge, just a couple of sixth years dozing in armchairs near the fire. They barely glance up as you enter, too sleepy to question why three students are arriving together through an entrance that's supposed to lead to the dormitories. You mumble something about studying in the library and make your way to a corner where you can have some privacy. The moment you collapse onto one of the squashy sofas, exhaustion hits you like a physical force. Your whole body aches and your mind feels fuzzy, overwhelmed by everything that happened. Marlowe sits beside you, and Pippa curls up in an adjacent armchair, pulling her knees to her chest. "That was," Pippa starts, then stops, apparently unable to find words adequate to describe it. "Terrifying," you supply. "Dangerous, reckless, nearly disastrous." "But we handled it," Marlowe adds. "When the situation went wrong, we didn't panic. We worked together, and we got everyone out safely. That counts for something." You think about that, about the moment when you grabbed the manuscript despite the cold, despite the fear, about Marlowe joining you without hesitation, about Pippa knowing exactly what spell to cast to mark the book's proper location, about all of you lifting it together, fighting against the weight of all those stolen memories. "Silas really was desperate," Pippa says softly. "I almost feel sorry for him. Imagine having parents who make you feel like you're worthless unless you're perfect." "A lot of people have that," Marlowe says, staring into the fire. "The pressure to succeed, to live up to expectations. It's not an excuse for what he tried to do, but I understand why he thought it was his only option. Sometimes when you're drowning, you'll grab onto anything, even if it pulls you down faster." You glance at her, hearing something in her tone that suggests she's speaking from personal experience. Marlowe rarely talks about her family, but you know her parents have high expectations too, that being a Slytherin comes with its own set of pressures and assumptions. "Do you think he'll be okay?" you ask. "Really okay, I mean." Marlowe considers this. "I think tonight might have been a turning point for him. He saw what happens when you try to take shortcuts with magic, when you let desperation override common sense. That's a lesson that tends to stick. Whether he can stand up to his family's expectations, whether he can find a way to be himself rather than what they want him to be, that's harder to say. But at least now he knows he doesn't have to face it completely alone." The fire crackles, sending up a shower of sparks. One of the sixth years nearby starts snoring softly. Outside the circular windows, you can see the first hints of dawn beginning to lighten the sky, pale gray creeping in at the edges of black. "We should probably get some sleep," Pippa says, though she makes no move to get up. "It's nearly morning." "In a minute," you say. You're not ready yet to leave this moment, this quiet aftermath, where the three of you can just sit together and process what happened. Your mind keeps replaying the events of the night, Silas's desperation, the shadow ravens, the cold weight of the manuscript in your hands, the feeling of foreign memories trying to overwrite your own. You were brave tonight, Marlowe says suddenly, looking at you. When you grabbed the manuscript, you didn't know what would happen. You could have been hurt, seriously hurt, but you didn't hesitate. Neither did you point out. You helped me close it. And I did the shelf spell, Pippa adds. So, really, we were all brave. We were all kind of amazing, actually. We broke into the restricted section, confronted someone who was making a terrible mistake, fought off shadow birds that may or may not have been real, and closed a cursed book of memory magic. That's pretty impressive for a Thursday night. You can't help but laugh at that. A genuine laugh that breaks the remaining tension in the air. Saturday night, you correct. It was Saturday. Was it? Pippa looks genuinely confused. It feels like we've lived through an entire week. That's because we nearly died, Marlowe says dryly, but there's a smile playing at the corners of her mouth. Or worse, had our memories scrambled and replaced with fragments from dead dark wizards. Definitely worse than dying, Pippa agrees solemnly, then ruins it by yawning widely. The yawn is contagious. You feel your own jaw stretching, your eyes watering. The adrenaline that kept you going through the night is finally wearing off completely, leaving behind a bone-deep tiredness that makes even thinking feel difficult. All right, you say, forcing yourself to stand. Bed, now, before we all fall asleep right here and wake up with Professor Sprout asking us why we're using the common room sofas as dormitories. Marlowe unfolds herself from the couch with visible effort, and Pippa practically rolls out of her armchair. The three of you make your way toward the dormitory stairs, moving with the careful coordination of people who are too tired to walk properly, but too determined to give up. At the stairs, Marlowe pauses. Thank you, she says quietly, for including me tonight, even though I'm not a Hufflepuff, even though I'm a Slytherin and we're supposed to be separate and suspicious of each other. You've never treated me like house stereotypes matter, and I appreciate that more than I usually say. The emotion in her voice catches you off guard. Marlowe isn't usually one for heartfelt declarations. Your family, you say simply. House colors don't change that. Pippa throws her arms around both of you, pulling you into a slightly awkward three-way hug. Best friends, she declares. Forever. Even when we're old and gray and telling stories about the time we fought shadow ravens in the restricted section, and no one believes us. No one will definitely believe us, Marlowe says, but she's hugging back, her arms tight around both of you. You stand there for a moment, the three of you tangled together, and you feel something warm bloom in your chest. This is what matters, you think. Not perfect grades or family expectations or forbidden manuscripts. These friendships. These people who would risk everything to stand beside you in the dark. This is what real magic looks like. Eventually you separate, and Marlowe heads for the entrance that will take her back to the dungeons and the Slytherin common room. You and Pippa climb the stairs to your dormitory, moving as quietly as possible to avoid waking the other girls. Your bed has never looked more inviting, with its warm yellow comforter and pile of soft pillows. You change into your pajamas in the dark, too tired for anything more elaborate than pulling off your robes and pulling on something comfortable. When you finally collapse into bed, your body seems to sink into the mattress, every muscle releasing tension you didn't know you were holding. But before sleep can claim you, you hear a soft voice from the bed next to yours. "Hey," Pippa whispers. "Are you awake?" "Barely," you whisper back. Do you think Hogwarts has more secrets like that? More dangerous books and hidden passages and things we're not supposed to find? You think about the castle, ancient and vast and full of mysteries accumulated over 1,000 years. "Definitely," you say. "And do you think someday we'll find them?" You smile into your pillow. "Probably, but maybe next time we'll tell a professor first." Pippa giggles softly. "Maybe, but probably not." "Probably not," you agree. Silence settles over the dormitory, broken only by the gentle sound of breathing and the distant hoot of an owl. Your mind drifts, thoughts becoming looser and less coherent as sleep pulls you under. You think about Silas and wonder if he's sleeping too, if he's found some peace after the terror of tonight. You think about the manuscript and all those trapped memories, fragments of people who made terrible choices and paid terrible prices. You think about how close you came to becoming one of those fragments yourself. But mostly, you think about how lucky you are. Lucky to have friends who will follow you into danger. Lucky to have survived something that could have ended very differently. Lucky to be here, safe and warm in your bed at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, with another day of magic and learning and possibility waiting for you when you wake. The last thing you're aware of before sleep finally takes you is the weight of your wand on the bedside table, solid and reassuring, a reminder that you're more capable than you sometimes give yourself credit for. You closed the Corvus manuscript. You fought off shadow ravens. You helped someone in desperate need of help, even though he didn't really deserve it. Maybe you think as consciousness fades, maybe you're not just an average student who procrastinates on homework. Maybe you're someone who rises to the occasion when it matters. Maybe you're someone brave. The thought follows you down into dreams, where shadow ravens transform into actual ravens that circle overhead in an impossibly blue sky, where books open to reveal stories that haven't been written yet, where the manuscript sits safely on its shelf and stays there, its secrets locked away where they belong. Tomorrow you'll have to face that overdue Transfiguration essay. Tomorrow you'll have to pretend that nothing happened, that Saturday night was perfectly ordinary. Tomorrow Silas Blackwood will nod at you in the Great Hall, a silent acknowledgement of shared secrets and second chances. And you'll nod back because you understand now that everyone's fighting their own battles. Everyone's trying to live up to expectations that might be impossible to meet. But that's tomorrow. Tonight, you sleep the deep, dreamless sleep of someone who has faced something dark and terrible and come through it intact. Tonight, you rest in the knowledge that you're exactly where you're meant to be, surrounded by friends and magic and the ancient, protective walls of Hogwarts. And in the restricted section, in the deepest corner of the library, where moonlight never quite reaches, the Corvus manuscript sits on its shelf among the other forbidden books, waiting. It will wait for decades, for centuries perhaps, until someone else is desperate enough or foolish enough to try to claim its power. But for now, tonight, it waits alone, its secrets undisturbed, its memories locked safely within pages of raven feathers and dark magic. The castle settles into its deepest nighttime quiet, the hour when even ghosts rest and portraits sleep. In the Hufflepuff dormitory, in a comfortable bed with yellow curtains, you sleep peacefully, one hand curled beneath your cheek, your breathing slow and even. Outside, stars wheel across the sky. The forbidden forest rustles with nocturnal life. The lake reflects the moon like polished silver. And in the morning, when you wake to sunlight streaming through the circular windows and Pippa shaking your shoulder, because you're going to be late for breakfast, you'll smile at the memory of last night's adventure. You'll see Marlowe in the corridor and exchange a knowing glance. You'll notice Silas in Charms class, see the dark circles under his eyes already fading, see something in his posture that suggests he's carrying his burdens a little more lightly. You'll go to classes and study and laugh with friends and live your life as a fourth-year Hufflepuff student at Hogwarts. But you'll also know, deep in your bones, that you're capable of more than you realized. That when the moment comes, when something important is at stake, you can be brave and clever and strong. And that knowledge, that certainty about who you are and what you're capable of, that's a kind of magic too. The best kind, perhaps. The kind that no manuscript can give you and no shadow raven can take away. The night deepens toward dawn. The castle dreams. And you, curled up safe and warm in your bed, dream too. Of ravens and books and secrets. Of friendship and courage and second chances. Of magic and mystery and all the adventures still waiting to be discovered in the countless corridors and hidden rooms of Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Tomorrow will bring new challenges, new lessons, new moments of wonder and frustration and joy. But tonight, you rest. Tonight, you've earned your sleep. The fire in the common room below burns low, casting gentle orange light across empty sofas and abandoned chess sets. In the dormitory, your dormmates breathe in synchronized rhythm, a soft chorus of sleepers. Your cat, curled up at the foot of your bed, purrs contentedly, a sound like distant thunder. And somewhere in the castle, in a tower or dungeon or hidden corridor, other students are having their own adventures, making their own mistakes, learning their own lessons. Because that's what Hogwarts is, a place where magic happens, where ordinary people discover they're extraordinary, where every dark corridor might lead to something wonderful or terrible, or both at once. But for you, for now, there's only sleep, deep and peaceful and well-deserved. The kind of sleep that heals and restores, that prepares you for whatever comes next. The stars continue their slow dance across the sky. The moon begins its descent toward the western horizon. The first birds begin their morning songs, tentative notes in the pre-dawn darkness. And you sleep on, dreaming of magic, safe in the knowledge that you're home. And so, our story comes to a close, dear friend. You've walked through moonlit corridors, faced shadow ravens and cursed manuscripts, discovered courage you didn't know you possessed, and learned that the most powerful magic often comes from the bonds we form with others. The restricted section holds its secrets once more. Silas has learned his lesson, and you and your friends have shared an adventure that will connect you for the rest of your lives. Some mysteries are better left unsolved, some books better left unopened, but every experience, even the frightening ones, teaches us something valuable about who we are and who we want to become. Thank you for joining me on this journey through the magical corridors of Hogwarts. May your dreams be peaceful, your sleep deep and restorative, and may you wake tomorrow knowing that you too are capable of extraordinary things. Until our next adventure, sleep well, dear friend. The magic will still be there, waiting for you when you wake.